Okay, we're up to 1954. Well, 53, 54. And Chicago decided they'd had enough of this being competitive thing, so they took the year off, it seems. Detroit 37, 19, and 4. They lead the league again. Montreal 35, 24, and 11. There's really a hierarchy here. Toronto 32, 24, and 14. Boston 32, 28, and 10. The Rangers 29, 31, and 11, so they missed the playoffs. Or 29, 31, and 10. They missed the playoffs again. Odds are the circus would have kept them out anyways. In Chicago, 12 wins, 51 losses, 7 ties. 12. Harry Lumley of the Toronto Maple Leafs gets 13 shutouts and a 1.86 goals against average. So remember how Al Rollins going to Chicago got Chicago into the playoffs? That's ancient history. Terry Sawchuk of Toronto, 12 shutouts, 1.93 goals against average. Welcome to the era of the goaltenders. And it's not the last year of the goaltenders either. We will be seeing at least one more that I can remember from my own younger days. Chicago allowed 60 more goals than the 5th place Rangers, who allowed 182. They allowed 242 goals. In a league where you had goaltenders at 1.86, 1.93, they had a goals against average as a team of 3.46. It was a shooting gallery against Al Rollins, thus a Hart Trophy awarded to him because he had the guts to stand in net for 70 games and try to keep pucks out. So he had an awful goals against. Odds are if they kept save percentages back then, it wasn't very good either. But the NHL looked at that and said, oh boy. And he was voted as the most valuable player in the league. Dick Irvin reaches 600 wins. Rocket Richard calls Clarence Campbell a dictator in a newspaper because Boom Boom Geoffrion wasn't allowed to play against the Rangers for the rest of the season. Remember, there's 5 teams, 70 games, so that's about 10 games that Boom Boom wouldn't have been able to play. It's interesting because Rocket Richard and Clarence Campbell had a very heated relationship. Really didn't like each other a whole lot. And the funny thing is, Ron Murphy of the Rangers had his jaw broken by Boom Boom. That's why Clarence Campbell said he's not playing against the Rangers the rest of the year. Didn't prohibit him from playing games against anybody else. So that's strange. And I'm trying to think if that's the only time in hockey history that's happened where a guy's been suspended, but only against one team and only in a certain circumstance. Other than that, you can go ahead and play. That's really weird. Of course, the contentious relationship between Rocket Richard and Clarence Campbell is something that we will see again during this series, and it eventually erupts. But Rocket ended up paying a $100 fine and he was forced to apologize for stating that Clarence Campbell was a dictator in a Quebec newspaper. Doug Harvey has the unenviable position as a guy who had an own goal in Game 7 in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Detroit Red Wings harmlessly dump the puck down the ice. He gloves it down, and it goes in the net. And that's the game winner for the Stanley Cup. So when people talk about embarrassing mistakes that guys have made, no, remember that stupid move that guy made? Hall of Famer Doug Harvey was directly responsible for these guys being champs that year. December 12th, 1953, Rocket Richard reaches 611 points, breaking the all-time record that Elmer Locke had held. And that's the problem. When you've got a guy who is the biggest name in the game, who has scored more points, more goals, he reached 350 goals that year as well, and he hates the president of the league, it's going to create some problems. We don't really see that anymore, not publicly, but I think, lockouts tell you that there are people who don't like owners in the NHL. Gordie Howe is the first one to lead the league in scoring 4 straight seasons. So your Hart Trophy goes to Rollins, your Art Ross Trophy goes to Gordie Howe. The Norris comes into existence. The James Norris Trophy for defense, and the Norris goes to Red Kelly of the Detroit Red Wings. The Calder Trophy goes to Camille Henry of the New York Rangers. The Vezina, of course, goes to Harry Lumley of the Toronto Maple Leafs, who barely edges out Terry Sawchuk. And Lady Byng goes to Red Kelly as well of the Detroit Red Wings, a guy that Detroit didn't think a whole lot of, and then he came in and he was a dominant defenseman. They're like, oh, lucky for us. And the playoffs. Detroit destroys Toronto in Game 1 5-0. Now remember, they destroyed Boston in Game 1 7-0 yesterday. Yesterday's in yesterday's portion of this series, but Boston came back and won the series. Toronto comes back and wins game 2 3-1, but Detroit learned. They win both games on the road in Toronto 3-1 and 2-1, and then they win at home 4-3 in double overtime. So in a matchup between Sawchuk and Lumley, Sawchuk gets the win. Lumley might have got the Vezina, but Sawchuk gets the last laugh in the playoffs. Montreal plays Boston, which means Montreal's going to win. Montreal wins 2-0. They win 8-1. And then in Boston, they win 4-3 and 2-0 to sweep the Boston Bruins because Montreal-Boston is a bad matchup. I've said it before. It's a bad matchup for Boston. In the finals, Detroit wins 3-1 in Game 1. Montreal wins Game 2 3-1. In Montreal, Detroit wins both games, meaning they are now 4-0 on the road in these playoffs. They win 5-2 and 2-0, but they lose at home 1-0 to Montreal in overtime. Then they lose in Montreal 4-1, and then at home, so it's in Detroit, they win in overtime 2-1 on that own goal by Doug Harvey. So there you go. Not a proud moment for Harvey, but a very proud moment for the Detroit Red Wings franchise. And Game 7, controversial ending. And I'm telling you, if we had the technology back then to have the kind of high-def picture and all the color and everything, that image of Harvey gloving the puck down and it going into his own net would still be shown 15 times a month on blooper reels on every sports network you can imagine. But he was lucky enough not to have that problem. There you go. The 1953-54 season. And our winners, the Detroit Red Wings. Detroit, Montreal, Toronto. Detroit, Montreal, Toronto. Detroit. Eventually Chicago's going to get there, but they're not there yet. They're trying, but they're not there yet. Worthy of note, Jean Beliveau has started playing for Montreal at this point. So again, Montreal's going to start getting better, and their dominance is on the way. So if you're a Habs fan, you're in luck. Your patience is going to be rewarded in that series. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And thank you guys for being out there. It makes it worth being in here. I'll talk to you again soon.